It has now come out in U.S. and European courts that basically the entire stock market, currency transactions, interest rates, you name it, are totally rigged. The United States is going under a secret treaty that passed out of the House and is now in the Senate that makes the president a dictator. 3 subsections of 28 have been leaked. One of the sections alone makes the president a dictator. We've only seen 3 of 28. So with this whole backdrop, government and major corporations are operating and acting like the people don't even exist right now. And more is happening in the advancement of tyranny in just a month than what happened previously in a year. So global oppression, global power grabbing is at a fever pitch. And expanding on that, the only reason we have private property and so much wealth in the United States and so much freedom compared to many other countries is because our forebears would die rather than be enslaved. Does it mean we're a utopia? Does it mean we don't have a bad history in many cases? No. But compared to other nations, we've been stable, we've been free, we've been wealthy. Didn't mean everybody got along, didn't mean it was all peaches and cream, but compared to every other country, we were the freest. It's why everybody wanted to come here. Nobody can deny that. We were exceptional when it came to freedom. We are now exceptional when it comes to not having freedom, to losing freedom, and to being unhealthy and being stupid. We're still exceptional, but on the wrong end of the stick. And I don't say that with pleasure. I love this country. But we're run by a bunch of hardcore psychopaths who have competed with each other in their own free market of scum to where the very worst have now gotten in control. Now, let me boil it down as simply as I can, then I'll go into the evidence. There is 2.2, last time the XM Bank put numbers out last year, 2.2 quadrillion in global fake counterfeited currency and instruments. Credit default swaps, you name it. Hundreds of different forms of junk. Totally worthless fraud sold to governmental and private and individual investors. 2,200 and growing $trillion of absolute garbage. The EU, the Asian Union, the American Union, all run by the same handful of families and the private Federal Reserve, are committed to propping that up and having that continue on into the future, and they will feed every paycheck, every government, every institution, every pension fund, every solvent institution, every solvent instrument into that to prop it up, while they use that 2 quadrillion plus to leverage and buy up the planet through fraud. So they're very arrogant. They've already captured the world for all intents and purposes, except for 7 countries that they don't fully control. And they are attacking economically and socially those 7 to bring them down. Doesn't mean those 7 are good countries. It means they're nothing compared to the New World Order when it comes to hardcore evil, scientific wickedness, and just pure anti-human will. They're old-fashioned corruptions where people just want power and a lot of times want prestige and actually to have a successful country. They are nothing compared to what we're facing. And they have to have a world government because once it's there, you can worldwide, nobody can run from taxes, nobody can run from social engineering, nobody can run from GMO, nobody can escape it. You can't have capital flights. It will be a global hegemonic system of total micromanagement and control in their own words. Now, here's what's happening. And I've got the articles up on Infowars.com linked under the video. Total emergency alert, elite now evacuating the West. To sit back at afar and watch what they've set up happen. Their consolidation. They just move back as we melt down and explode to a safe distance. The communist Chinese. The totalitarian Germans. The gangster, cult of power Russians, the state of Texas, private investors, they've all been pulling gold out of Manhattan for about 5 years. And suddenly, I mean, I heard about this 6-7 years ago and didn't believe it, but now it's confirmed, tungsten-plated gold out of New York Fed vaults. Tungsten-plated gold. The gold's gone, folks. It was stolen. And they use fake tungsten bars to leverage the real paper value of gold and silver in naked shorts to drive it down. And now all these elites and the Telegraph, you name it, are saying it's time to hold your cash. You can't trust the banks. Global bank runs are starting in Europe. The state of Texas has demanded its giant gold reserves from the private Federal Reserve. That's in Bloomberg Friday. That type of stuff doesn't happen unless other establishments that aren't part of the central New York private Federal Reserve, European-owned system, anybody who isn't part of that system is pulling their money out of it as fast as they can. The Germans, 5 years ago, began to ask for their gold and were told, no, you can't have it. You can only have a percentage of it over 10 years. Well, 5 years later, Germany's received gold, and part of it, when they drill into it, is tungsten. And that's just a minor blip on the radar screen. Where's Germany's gold? How a Manhattan jeweler wound up with gold bars filled with tungsten. Business Insider. U.S. gold bars are showing up in China. Tungsten. Do you understand? That's why they're menacing Russia and China. They need an excuse before this all goes belly up to start a big war, to have that as the distraction, because we'll line up and salute the criminals in government when they're all about to go to jail like Bernie Madoff because they've started some war, and why we can't send them to jail during a war. When we come back, I'm going to break down the fact that the elite are evacuating the United States. What's the next big shoe to drop? All right, so we have this giant house of cards run by just a few families, mainly European, that own our private Federal Reserve and the European central banks. They control the massive European and U.S. military and NATO. They're allied with Saudi Arabia to turn al-Qaeda loose, to destabilize the whole region and kill every Christian they find. This is our elite funding this publicly. And they're now threatening war with China, threatening war with Russia, moving more troops in. And Greece has paid unlimited amounts of money from the derivatives that they invested in and got cheated on. And now they want a fourth bailout. And Greece is saying they can't do it. They're basically starving. They've gone from first world to third world. And now Greeks turn to cash as bank crisis looms. So the government's talking about freezing everybody's bank accounts, not letting them get cash out. And they're talking about doing this Europe-wide and banning the physical holding of gold. There's a huge financial crisis intensifying in Europe, and you turn on U.S. news, you wouldn't know anything was happening. You've got a public obsessed with fantasy football and all the rest of it, while huge global developments are happening. And I got 2 calls yesterday, one from a banking/military source, one from a major entertainment source. I'll just leave it at that, but a household name. And their questions were both to me, and they don't know each other, was, so you're really not going to leave the U.S. because most of the really rich people are saying the word is we're going to collapse. It could be as early as this summer, probably next fall for sure. And that anybody who's smart is hedging their bets getting out of the country. And did I think they should leave? And I was saying, look, I don't think there's anywhere safe if this thing goes belly up or if we have nuclear war with Russia. I don't know why it's in the London Guardian and Zero Hedge and the Associated Press that the elites are building underground bunkers and running to New Zealand. And, you know, I knew about this back when nobody else did. A lot of Hollywood folks were relocating out there because they've been given inside intel, James Cameron and others. Billionaire bunkers beyond panic room. Home security goes sci-fi, Forbes. And that's because the elites know this is unsustainable. And then they put out headlines like this, the London Independent today, Earth enters sixth extinction phase with many species, including our own, labeled the walking dead. The political class has decided that they can't keep this thing going anymore. And they've decided to go ahead and not stabilize things and not try to create wealth and not try to create a good culture. There's always been a fight between predators and good people in government and corporations. Now, even good people have decided it can't be fixed. They've given up. The corrupt and the sane are now in a money grab to just get plenty of funds and resources for themselves to be safe during the long collapse. So the establishment across the board is giving up. And large sections of the establishment organized this and wanted to collapse, and they never gave up because exactly what they wanted to do is happening. A global spectrum of crises coming to a head at the same time during a period of turmoil to then bring in global planetary government as the solution. But first they had to get us in debt. First they had to dumb us down. First they had to break our families up. First they had to balkanize us to all fight with each other about race and religion. Hey, a recession here means you don't get to go on as many vacations. A recession in Africa means millions starve to death and die. Used to about 32 million people a decade ago would die every year of starvation. Now it's like 60 million. The world is in a giant financial depression. If your neighbor is out of work for a year, he's in a depression, or she's in a depression. But when you're out of work, you're in a depression. And the West is in total la-la land. When third world countries collapse, people know how to deal with it. When a first world collapses, you're going to see panicked hysteria and bizarre behavior that is going to make the sickening activity at that South Carolina church look like a cakewalk. And the reason they can't get the guns is everybody instinctively knows that at least you'll have firearms to protect yourself and protect what you've put in reserve when the hordes, when the road meets road warrior, come down your road. I remember being in Hollywood about 5-6 years ago, and I was at a party, and there were like major directors, major producers, billionaires. And a couple of them said to me, yeah, you know, you're right about what's going on, and it's worse than you know. And are you going to move to New Zealand like most of us are? And I said, why? And they said, you know. And they said, let me tell you something. This was separate from this other billionaire I talked to her in Austin. They said, don't you understand what you say on your show is true? And that we're getting all the same information from people on the inside? They're building secret airstrips all over Alaska, all over northern Canada, all over New Zealand, all over the Cook Islands, all over the middle of nowhere to get out of here. And then George Soros and his frontmen are coming out saying, redistribute wealth or the people are going to take over and overthrow, when they're the ones that have engineered the destruction of the wealth. They're now already posing as the saviors. And they're going to use their big private yachts and the rest of it to basically escape all of this. Peter Thiel, Bilderberg Group member for at least 6 years, has been building floating cities to escape to. Whether we could sustain things or not doesn't matter now. The establishment has decided not to sustain it. You understand that? And they've all got plans to consolidate power and pick up the pieces. Look at these headlines. Greeks turn to cash as bank crisis looms. Voice of America, Bloomberg, where is Germany's gold? They asked for it, the U.S. won't give it to them. There's a pile of gold in Manhattan. Texas wants it back, Bloomberg. China reveals what's behind its golden curtain.